Hello fantastic creatures, I'm Fantasims and today I'm going to show you a quick video of how I made this Viking roofing for an upcoming build that should be coming out in the next day or so. Now I first shaped the roofing by holding down the Shift and the C key, which allows you to have an extra mechanism for the way that you can shape the roof. And then I just took objects, the tiles I was going to use and these base game chests, these wooden boxes, and rotated them I think in increments of 10. And then that way I could just choose which angle I thought suited the slope the best. Now this was before the new TwistedMexi's toolmod update, so I had to make a straight and an angled version of the roofing. Now we can just make one version and rotate the whole thing on the side. But for this one I had to make them separately, and they were slightly differently because one was a bit wider than the other. But I just followed the curve of the roofing with these boxes, and I had to just tweak the elevation slightly, as you can see here, as I went along. And it was a bit different on the straight version than the angled version, so I did a bunch of that off camera because it just took forever. And then I just took some time to tweak the sizing. And for this one, to make it look extra chunky and extra thick, I selected all the pieces, duplicated them, then flipped them upside down, and then elevated them to make them fit right underneath. And then to hide that white trim that you see at the edge of the roofing, I also selected the boxes again and then rotated them facing towards what you see here, the camera, the view that you're seeing right now. I'm struggling with my words today, and I didn't take any notes for this, so I'm just winging it. So if I blunder anything, you'll know why. So you see here, I rotate it forwards, and that way it just gave it a nice, really thick, chunky feel to it. And I wanted that, you know, that Viking look of having a lot of metal and a lot of wood. And so then I just copied and pasted it on the other side. And this was actually my favorite part, was using the tiling. And I did the same thing. I made 3 rows where I rotated each of them by 10 degrees off camera, and that way I could just choose which angle I thought sloped the best with the roofing. And this is the fencing from Journey to Batuu. Now it comes with a longer strip as well, but that one doesn't rotate, but this one does for some reason, which I'm okay with. At least one of them rotates, so that's why I had to use 3 sets of them instead of the one long strip that comes in the debug menu. And I just loved it because it gave it that really chunky tile look to it. And it took a while to get it to slope properly, especially because they were kind of sticking above the wooden trim that I had created. But with the tool mod, I was able to tweak it and keep tweaking it until it looked really nice and smooth. And the great thing about this is I only had to really create one side of the roof, and then I could just copy and paste the room and flip it over onto the other side. So that's what I did. And then I had to do another version for the angled one, which was pretty much the same, although the angled version was a bit wider, so I did have to try and resize the tiles to make them fit. And then I just used more of the chests to make a trim at the top, and then what you saw me doing right here, where I just rotate them into a circle to give it kind of a decorative tip at the end. And then I used more chests to decorate the front of the roofing and to create like some arches. And then I used these Get Famous ship wheels just to add a bit more wood decor. And then these are from Snowy Escape. They're the Asian styled, I don't even know what those are called, just archways or whatever. And then this was actually my favorite part, when I rotated these rocks from Snowy Escape into Viking horns. And they did turn out a bit chunky, but what I did love about this is that I was able to use the beige colored swatch for the base of the horns, and then the white colored swatch for the tips. So it kind of gave that, you know, like natural bone has that darker color at the base and then gets lighter towards the tip. So I thought that kind of gave it more of a realistic look to it. It was a little tricky, especially having to make 2 versions, the straight version and the angled version. Actually, I think the angled version came together a lot easier, and it does kind of have a stripy look to it because of the base of the rocks, but I tried my best to smooth them out and blend them into each other. And then I selected all of them afterwards and rotated them upside down to try and smooth out that underneath part. And maybe that was a bit unnecessary, but I eventually got it to have that nice long horn shape to it. And then it was just a matter of touching up the edges, pulling everything together. So I rotated these posts from their debug from Island Living. There's also the same kind of posts in Cats and Dogs, but the Island Living version has the pale wood at the tip of these posts, and then it's got like that green mossy look of where it goes into the water. And so to hide the seams where I had layered them on top of each other, I used these base game debug sanding blocks. I rotated them sideways, and just to give it a look of like metal, not hinges, but whatever's connecting the wood together. And then I wanted to create some shields on the side of the roofing. Now the tricky thing with this is that whenever you make any changes to the room, like if you were to build a wall or whatever, things like if you rotate tables or chairs, they tend to get deleted or they drop down to the floor and you have to re-elevate them. So it was a bit tricky using tables, but this table from Cats and Dogs is perfect because it has this trim and then it's got that weathered wood look to it, so it was perfect for a shield. Then I just rotated the Journey to Batuu metallic wall decoration and the Get to Work pipe caps and use those as like a centerpiece. So I mean, it's kind of a weird looking shield, but it gets the look across. And then I used these driftwood pieces, and this part was a bit tricky because not only did I have to slope it down in an angle, but it had to curve along with the roof, so it took a lot of tweaking. But again, the great thing was that I only had to create it for one side and then I could copy and paste it to the other. Of course, when I pasted it to the other side, it did drop the table down, so then I had to re-elevate it. So it was a bit fiddly. It was a bit of tweaking, I had to do a lot of tweaking for this, but the end result was worth it. And so I love these driftwood pieces because if you layer them on top of each other like that, it kind of gives a sense of rope. So I've used that driftwood for a lot of things. So I just kept tweaking it until it sloped down and created this sort of roped X shape to it. The annoying thing though was that I had to then do it again for the angled version, but you know what, it's fine. I'm happy now that we don't have to do that with the new features of the tool mod. And then of course I use this really cool Mandalorian decor from Journey to Batuu because it's got the horns on it, like the beast with the horns on it. And then I used these rocks that also come with Journey to Batuu, like these decorative rocks, because they look like kind of short tip horns, and I just tipped all the edge pieces that I had created with the sanding blocks. And then I did the same thing with these. I don't even know what these are supposed to be, but I like how they look because it's got the metal, the circular metal to it. And so I did it in a way where it looked like the horns were coming out of these decorative pieces that I'm rotating and resizing here. And then it just, I don't know, it just tied everything together and it just created like this little flip up at the edge of the roof. And then I use more of the posts to just frame the front of the roofing like it's the scaffolding that's holding the whole roof together. And then I took some decorative pieces to tip the end. So I ended up using, I don't even know if you saw it in the footage, but one of the tips of the lightsabers has a like metal sticking out spike, and I used that to tip off the edges of the posts. And then I use these base game and Island Living tables to create like a wood trim to the post that I had made. But again, when I then used it in my build, every time I built a wall, not even next to the roof, but like even the level underneath, it kept dropping these tables down, so then I had to keep re-elevating them. So it might not have been the best option to use tables, but I think it made it look cool. And then I just used more of the Island Living tables to tip off the base of the horns to make it look like that's how it's being attached to the top of the roof. And that was pretty much it. Now I'll make this roofing available to download once I've posted the full build, so you can use these in your own game. But again, keep in mind, if you start building walls and stuff around it, some of the pieces might drop down. So if you have toolmod installed, you can just elevate those pieces, and if you don't, then you might just have to delete them and use another object. You could always use the chests that I used for the trim to hide any of those post seams without toolmod, and that's always an option. It's not perfect, but I think it turned out pretty good, and I think with the horns it has that really cool Viking feel to it. Well, thanks for bearing with my bumbling commentary. I hope you enjoyed this quick little build. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it an encouraging thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified about fresh content. I always appreciate you guys so much, and until next time, I love you guys so freaking much.